What's up, beautiful people? This is going to be another short one from my humble room here. I'm just going to be, I've heard from people that, sometimes I don't explain myself well enough, that I just say things and, people are kind of left hanging. And, I do want to, let people know that, part of it is intentional. Part of it, I'm not trying to mislead anyone, but part of it is I want people to, come and see for themselves. I want people to figure things out for themselves. I don't want to be the one that micromanages and tells everything to everybody. I think that's the beauty of learning is I don't need to be the one teaching everyone constantly. Learning is self-initiated. So in this regard, part of it is intentional, of saying too little and sometimes saying too much. I think there's a purpose for both. So I'm just going to go through a few of my recent posts and comments just to let you guys know what's going through my mind when I'm posting these things. So we'll just go to Telegram here. It'd be better if I ratio it out. There we go. Very cool post about farming, electro farming with the magnets and all that kind of stuff and electricity. Anyhow, so let's start with this. All simulation is a thought. All thought simulation. So thought is always measuring. Thought is always running its processes of calculations and predictions and probability, but some things are outside of probability altogether. Some things are outside of thought altogether. Some things don't even need to be simulated, and some things don't require stimulation, which is the next thing. Is the whole point of simulation is really stimulation. Right? You're always looking to simulate some experience. And that experience, it gives stimulation. That's why you seek the simulation or the experience. And the whole point is that the simulation itself isn't bad. Thought itself isn't bad. It's that when the stimulations are so over-exercised, so emphasized, so forcefully exerted, right? It ruins the whole simulation, and the simulation becomes a hell, a kind of a living hell. So yeah, I mean, just in the words, you can see that simulation and stimulation are what? One letter apart, right? Yeah, one letter apart. And just one T, one physical apart. The physical simulation is the stimulation. So yeah, don't condemn these feelings, because yeah, that's what it is. The stimulation is a feeling, right? It's a feeling, but also a desire. And again, that 10% desire, eating is not bad, but don't overeat. Don't use eating for gluttonous purposes. Essentially, it's that simple. You can look at that of me talking about the simulation as that is don't eat when you're full. Right? Don't unnaturally seek so much stimulation, unnecessary stimulation. And then if you have unnecessarily stimulated yourself, remain with it, see it, and move on. Make your notes, learn what you have to, and then move on. It's when you don't move on, you return to this need for excessive stimulation. And then here, let's see, a brand new day, the greatest gift of all. Every morning I feel this. Every morning when I wake up, I'm like, wow, I'm here. Of course I deserve this and I'm worthy for this, right? But in some sense, I'm not worthy. I don't deserve such a clean slate, such a new, bright, fantastic day. It's just, how can I be gifted this every day? So that it was that kind of a feeling. A brand new day. There's nothing as forgiving as a brand new day. And a lot of people, a new day is just another opportunity to repeat the old, the previous day, you know? And to some extent that's okay, but again, to some extent, this is totally new. Why mix it with the old, you know? So yeah, just to enjoy that. All right, we're getting into some serious stuff here. I am not here to please others. I am here to make things uncomfortably clear. And some people, being clear is not uncomfortable. But what I mean by that is usually clarity is slightly outside of one's comfort zone, because one's comfort zone usually, you know, is a little skewed. You know, we get too comfortable at times, right? We get too caught up in pleasing, in pleasure. And when we're too caught up in pleasure, we're not really clear. You know, it's, again, the stimulation is getting in the way of the simulation, or the simulation getting in the way of life. So yeah, these things. Being free of validation gives validity to one's work, because, you know, that is authenticity, is, you know, it's authenticated in itself. You know, it's not seeking to be authorized or authenticated by someone else. You know, it's not seeking for any licensing, for any approval. So in not seeking approval, it has been approved, if that makes sense. It's a little bit of a allegory of sorts, a little bit of a parable of sorts, I suppose, because there's a little bit of irony and somewhat of a paradox in there, but I think it's pretty straightforward. You know, when I don't need validation from others, I think the work becomes valid. It's when I need validation from others that my work is not really valid, right? And that's why I'm seeking for others to validate it. So these kinds of things. What is the cause of jealousy? Is it not comparison, self-worth inadequacy? Right? Because if I'm jealous of another, why am I jealous of another? You know, like, how does it serve me to be jealous of another? I mean, I guess you, in some capitalistic sense, so I produce a better product, right? But even, you know, doing better and innovating doesn't really require comparison at all. You know, it doesn't really, there's no real need to compare. And when there's no need to compare, that, you know, honestly, I think that's where the true innovation comes, is when I'm just doing me without need for comparison. And again, it's an inadequacy. The jealousy comes from inadequacy, because if you were adequate with yourself, if someone was doing better, why would you be jealous? Or if someone had something you didn't have, if you're already content with who you are, why would you have a problem with that? You would not have a problem with that. Right? Miserable people cannot stand others thriving free of their control. Now, this brings to mind the phrase, misery loves company. Right? So misery has a tendency to pull others down with it. So it's important when I do feel miserable, I'm sure everyone has times where they feel miserable, that we're not needing to put that misery on others. Right? That we hold our own burden. And I think some people are incapable of this. And because they're incapable of holding their own burden, they're constantly needing to put their burden on others. And in needing to put their burden on others, they don't like it when others are free of burden, are thriving, are free of their asks or their requests, and all of these things are really free of their control. So misery can't stand others that do not have that same burden. Right? So, you know, it's one thing if you're not miserable, but if you are miserable, don't feel the need to put it on someone else. You know, keeping the misery to yourself there's great compassion in that. Yeah, there's great strength in that. And, you know, really, I think perhaps if you can, you know, keep your own misery to yourself, you can sometimes help, other people's misery. Not that you need to, not that they not that you're enabling them to offload their misery onto you, but once you're not putting burden on others, sometimes it helps carry other people's burden. It shows them that, who and what and where is this burden. The need to control, or for control and influence others arises out of shame for oneself. Because if I am not ashamed of myself, I don't really need to control anyone else. You see what I'm saying? If someone else does poorly, they do poorly. If someone else does great, they do great. It's only when I am not comfortable with who I am deep down that I have to go out of my way to say, you're not doing great, or you're doing so well, whatever it is, that I feel the need to do all this. So when I don't need to influence or control anyone else, I'm not ashamed of myself. Maybe a bit of a leap for some people, but I think it's pretty straightforward. People who can't handle themselves look for an enemy in others. How big is this? This is the beginning of propaganda, folks. This is the beginning of warfare, psychological warfare, right? Again, it's the same thing as the next post, but if you can't handle yourself, if you're ashamed of yourself, every chance you get, you will try to offload that shame to someone else. And oftentimes unintentionally. Because as long as there's an enemy or there's a scapegoat out there, I don't have to deal with what I'm escaping in here. So that's another big thing, is that as long as we handle ourselves, there is no enemy. As long as every single person would handle themselves, how could there be an enemy? There could not be an enemy. I've never met a sour person who didn't eat garbage food, garbage in, garbage out. And this is funny because someone said, but sour isn't bad. Of course, sour is not bad. Often if you're sour, eating sour stuff will help you get less sour, which is funny. And even with the oranges, the sour oranges, I think, are on Sebi's list. So, different things like this. Yeah, what I meant by that is, people who have a bad countenance to them, people who don't, who are a little bit, how do you say, conflicted, always have some form of a conflict internally. We like to separate these things so much, our daily life from who we are, and our diet from what we say and what we do. But I think they're hand in hand, really. What I put in my body is the fruit I put outside of my body, that I make outside of the body. My labors come from the fruit I eat, or the fruit I don't eat, or whatever, So, basic things. You'll know a tree by its fruit, and we are that reverse tree. So you'll know by what kind of fruit we are taking, what kind of foods we are ingesting. So pretty self-explanatory, I think. Sickness is a choice, and most people can't wrap their minds around that. Healing is without choice, because there's a minimum requirement for healing, which is no damaging myself and adequately nourishing my cells, right? So those two things, I really don't have a choice. If I'm going to heal, damaging myself is not a choice. But the thing is, when I'm not healing, that means I'm choosing to damage myself, if that makes sense, because I'm leaving the parameters of what is natural. And of course, within what is natural, I have so many choices. That's true. But really, it's no choice at all, because I'm doing it because I have to. If I don't do what I have to, then I'm sick, if that makes sense. And so therefore, sickness would be a choice. not some external problem I can't stop, just like a precarious salvation, a reverse, a precarious damnation, right? Is the same thing, right? Something outside of my will is damning me. No, it's your will that damns yourself. No will outside of your own is responsible for damnation. And so most people can't wrap their minds around it, meaning most people can't be responsible for their own choices. And in people not being responsible for their own choices, they can't wrap their minds around the fact that sickness is their own doing, is their own will, their own choice. And so that's what I meant by that. We find ourselves making a big deal about others when we haven't fixed ourselves. Again, similar with the enemy thing. We have to look for something out there when we want to distract ourselves from what's going on in here. Because what's going on in here is the last thing I would want to look at. So as long as I look at everything that goes on out there, perhaps I'll miss what goes on in here. That kind of a thing. So I'll just do it up to this one. And then you guys can go watch this funny Jordan Peterson interview where Piers Morgan is somehow on our side now. Like, what is happening, guys? It is just absolutely insane. Well, actually, I'll go up to this one because it's a little ambiguous. So yeah, seeing through illusions created by thought is not only a right, but a duty. That shattering lies is not only our right, that questioning lies or questioning false authority or false evidence appearing real, questioning it all is not only a right, but a duty. And what does duty imply? There is no choice. I have to carry it out or the ship falls and is wrecked. So clarity, to some extent, it's not forced, but it's a duty. Meaning when not forced, you should be doing it naturally. So seeing through that which is false is a right, but a duty, but a need, a necessity, right? There's great freedom in not needing to justify yourself to anyone. Is there not? When I don't need to explain myself to anyone, I can just be me. I think so much of this world, we're so caught up in needing to explain ourselves. So yeah, I think there's a huge feeling of liberation when you can just be you without, needing to justify, explain, describe. Basically, there doesn't need to be any words for me to act or do or to be. And again, words are great, I'm not saying we should not use words anymore, unless we're all telepathic, But, action is pretty telepathic, It's hard to miscommunicate with action. But anyhow, I am the shield for the next generation. I take all the shade for regeneration. So because I care for what is going to come, I will face all the evils of now. Only if I face all the evils of right now, all the lies of right now, all the uncomfortable uncovered truths of right now, unless I face that, there is no regeneration. There is no next generation. There is no new generation. That I have to actively make a path right now for the next people to come. Not that they have to follow my path. But I hope you guys kind of get what I mean, is that, if I have to be the one that takes all of the bad blood and the you know, the shade and the, you know, the disrespect, because I champion, you know, what it means to regenerate the body, to regenerate the mind, to regenerate the organism, which really means no poison at all, and only going to those native plants that have the minerals and the regenerative capacity and the high pH. If I'm the only one who talks about these authentic plants and talks about not eating like non-authentic foods, I'll be the one if I have to. Yeah, again, I don't really see a choice here, because I want my children, I want other people's children, you know, I want other people here right now to, you know, have the best quality and quantity of life. And because of that, I'm willing to, you know, be the butt of the joke. I'm willing to take the short side of the stick. Because again, it's not about me. Of course, me is here, you know, of course I need to live every day. Of course, they're my, you know, common needs, you know, my basic necessities. But after those necessities are met, it's not about me. That's why I can take the shade. That's why I can take the disrespect. Because, you know, I just really have love for the next generation and for now. And so these are going to be the last three I do. Oh, wow. Yeah, this actually came from a conversation I had with Justin. Clarity, the antidote for all sickness and blindness. Because as long as I'm not clear, I'm sick or I'm blind, and they're the same thing, as I've been saying to you guys over and over again. That psychologically, if I'm not able to be clear, I am blind and therefore I am sick. Right? And that the antidote to it all is to look at that sickness or that blindness, because most people spend their entire lives running from it. That's why the same with this whole meditation thing. People spend their entire lives creating with thought this idea of stillness, this idea of meditation, never once looking at their erratic lack of stillness movement. And again, only a still mind can see the lack of stillness within one's own mind, if that makes sense. That the trait of a still mind is that it can spot, identify, and, you know, really dissolve that which is not still. So again, we don't have to create stillness, right? We don't have to create and you know, imagine and weave this spell of illusory stillness for that stillness to be there. That's kind of what I'm pointing out. So again, clarity or stillness is the ability to look at that which is not clear or that which is not still. Not an idea of stillness and clarity. So there's that. A true father disappears off the face of the earth and returns with a story. I think that's the true masculine figure, the true spark, the arc, the positive cycle of the arc. You know, this guy, essentially a hero, a man who goes on a hero's journey and like Terence McKenna says, brings back some kind of a relic from, you know, a dragon's head, metaphorically speaking, right? Who brings back something from that journey that's tangible and that, you know, can be applied and that, you know, is valuable to the whole community. But he would have not been able to bring that value if he did not leave the community. He doesn't have to physically leave. I'm saying psychologically speaking, if he was not independent of the community, he would not be able to go on the hero's journey. So a real father right? A mother will be with you forever. A mother will keep you alive again, but a father teaches you how to live. Why? Because he goes and fights to the death. And sometimes he comes back and he's alive, you know? And sometimes he dies for, you know, for dreaming, for doing what, you know, he wanted to do. Because, you know, every child, every, you know, person who looks up to a father wants to see that aspect in their father, that this guy goes out and does something impossible and no one can stop him, really. People may try, but, you know, everyone kind of laughs at the end of the day because they know who really is going to stop him. I think that's a true father, you know, and it's not because he doesn't care. It's not because, you know, he hates you. It's not because he has anything personal against you, but it's that if he did not go, quote unquote, fight that dragon, not that there's any dragon to fight, right? But if he did not go out there and go into the unknown and face his own fear, how would he help the community if he can't even face his own fear? So it's these kinds of questions. Yeah, that was a deep one, but it's a good one. But anyhow, yeah, led but not taken. And to some extent, you could say you're taken, right? But what I meant by that is, you know, a teacher leads, but he doesn't force you to come with him. You see what I'm saying? That a teacher may point you to an area, but even if you do not want to go and enter into that area, he doesn't take it personally. And in the same sense, right, is, you know, if you're led to the, you know, the right, I don't want to say conclusion, but if you're led to seeing correctly, you don't have to be persuaded, indoctrinated, or, you know, in some sense, swept off your feet, right? You don't need to be deprived of your ability to see. That's what I meant by this post, is that, again, that I may be a leader, but I'm not going to force anyone to see, because that would be the antithesis to seeing. If I force someone to see, right, that would be blindness on my part and on their part if they listen to my forcing. So in not forcing them to see, I am a leader. And I'm also a student because I see myself, or I see for myself. So in that sense, a true student doesn't need to be taken. He just sees. And when he does not need to see anymore, he lets go. I think this is very all common sense. Yeah, I don't think this is very far out concepts, very simple, you know? So yeah, I guess I'll end with that. I'll end with the lead. So yeah, let me know if this helps. Again, this is just for the people that think I say too much or say too little, whatever it is, right? So just, yeah, love you guys, and I'll see you next time.